You ever notice how people ignore you right up until the moment they realize they need you? How they walk past you like you're invisible, like you're just another face in the blur, another voice lost in the noise. Then suddenly, your name starts sounding different when they say it. Softer, sweeter. Almost like they always believed in you. Like they always knew you'd rise. Funny thing is, they don't come for you when you're struggling, when you're building, when you're crawling through the dirt. No, they wait, they watch, they whisper. And the moment the world starts turning in your direction, the moment the lights shift just a little, they appear. People ignore you until your value becomes impossible to overlook. That's the little trick of the world, isn't it? You could stand right in front of them, screaming, bleeding, fighting, working, and still they look right through you like you're made of smoke. As if your existence is some background noise they don't have to pay attention to. They brush past you with that casual arrogance only people who think they're winning ever have. But what they don't see, what they never see, is that while they're comfortable, you're changing. You're growing in the shadows they refuse to look into. You're sharpening every part of yourself they underestimated. And they'll pretend they didn't once ignore you, once dismiss you, once bet on your failure the moment your value shines too bright for them to avoid. It's funny how people behave when they believe you have nothing to offer. They act bored, detached, superior. They laugh a little too loudly at your ideas. They smirk a little too confidently at your dreams. They love to underestimate you when they think they know your limits. But they're not really seeing you. They're seeing the version of you that fits their comfort. The version that poses no threat. The version that makes them feel safe because they think you'll always stay below them. But life has a strange sense of humor. It lets them build these comfortable illusions just long enough for it to hurt when reality shifts. And oh, how reality shifts. One day you wake up tired of waiting for permission, tired of shrinking yourself to fit their expectations, tired of playing small, just that it won't feel small. And that tiredness turns into something dangerous. Something powerful. You start working differently, thinking differently, moving differently. You stop asking for attention and start building something they can't ignore. It's a slow fire, quiet and steady, growing under their noses while they're too busy looking elsewhere. They don't see it until the heat hits their skin. People only look when there's something to see. That's the truth. They don't care about your process, your sweat, your rough drafts, your late nights. They don't care how hard you've been clawing your way forward. They only care about results, about proof, about the shiny outcome that makes them feel like you suddenly matter. That's when the eyes turn. That's when the whispers start. That's when the same mouths that once doubted you begin forming your name with a different tone. A tone drenched in curiosity, envy, admiration, sometimes even regret. What they never admit is that they didn't overlook you because you lacked value. They overlooked you because your value didn't benefit them yet. People see only what serves them. They pay attention only when attention might offer them something in return. It's transactional, whether they admit it or not. When you had nothing, they pretended you didn't exist. When you start rising, they suddenly remember you. They start acting like they believed in you all along. They rewrite their memories to protect their pride. They pretend they saw your potential. But you remember the silence. You remember the empty rooms. You remember the smirks, and you realize something important. Being ignored was never the insult you thought it was. It was the training. It was the quiet space you needed to grow without noise, without interference, without everyone trying to mold you into their expectations. They thought they were dismissing you, but really, they were leaving you alone long enough for you to become someone they shouldn't have underestimated. Their ignorance became your breathing room. Then comes the moment, the first real moment they look at you differently. Their eyes widen just slightly. Their posture stiffens. Their voice changes tone. They pause. They don't even know why they're pausing, but you do. They've just realized you're no longer where they left you. You've stepped into a version of yourself they can't control, can't manipulate, can't dismiss. And that's when the tables turn. You don't have to chase them anymore. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to convince them of who you are. They'll see it. they'll feel it. They'll come to you, not out of kindness, not out of loyalty, but out of necessity. Because people always return when your value becomes too loud to ignore. They don't have a choice. Your presence becomes a spotlight they can't look away from. Your growth becomes a truth too big to deny. And the irony is, the same silence they once gave you becomes the silence they now hold while watching you rise to success, changes the volume of your silence. It's strange how the same quiet you carried for years, the same quiet nobody cared to notice, suddenly becomes loud enough to make people uneasy. When you were struggling, your silence was invisible. It was just emptiness to them, background noise. The quiet of someone they didn't think twice about. But the moment you start rising, the moment your name starts slipping into conversation they weren't expecting, that same silence becomes something else entirely. Suddenly, your quiet feels intentional, strategic, powerful. It makes them wonder what you know that they don't. People used to treat your silence like it meant weakness, like it meant you were unsure, unimportant, out of the game. They thought silence meant you were stuck, confused, small. They didn't realize silence can be a weapon, that sometimes silence isn't the absence of something. It's the presence of something growing, something building, something waiting for the right moment. And success flips that perception so fast it almost feels comedic. The same quiet that once made them ignore you now makes them uncomfortable, curious, threatened. You don't even have to speak. That's the beautiful part. Your silence does the talking for you. When you didn't have anything to show yet, no one cared what you weren't saying. Nobody wondered what you were thinking. You weren't a mystery, you were just overlooked. But rise a little, even just a little, and suddenly your silence has weight to it. People start reading into it. They start assuming it means you're planning something, doing something, becoming something. They study your pauses, your distance, your lack of reaction, as if every second of silence suddenly holds meaning. That's the thing about success. It changes how the world hears you, even when you're not speaking. It changes how they interpret your presence. When you succeed, every little thing about you becomes amplified. Your words, your steps, your choices, even your silence, especially your silence. Silence becomes the part that scares them the most, because they can't control it. They can't twist it. They can't argue with it. Silence gives them nothing to work with. And nothing drives people more insane than not knowing what's going on behind your calm expression. Silence becomes power the moment they realize they can't predict you anymore. Before, they thought they had you figured out, your habits, your limits, your patterns. They thought your quiet meant you were harmless. But then things shifted. You elevated. You improved. You changed direction. And suddenly that same quiet becomes the fog they can't see through. It forces them to question themselves. What are you building now? What are you planning? What are they missing? Why aren't you explaining anything to them anymore? That's when they start leaning in a little closer, trying to pick up clues from the quiet you once carried without anyone. Noticing there's a certain satisfaction in watching the world recalibrate around you without you saying a word. They used to ignore you freely. They used to speak over you, speak about you, speak around you. Now they speak cautiously. They choose their words more carefully. They hesitate. Your silence becomes their reminder that you don't move the way they expected. You don't need their approval. You're not operating from the same small place you used to be trapped in. And to them, that unpredictability is terrifying. Success doesn't just amplify your silence, it rewrites the story behind it. They start filling in the blanks themselves. They start imagining reasons for your quiet. And imagination can be far more intense than truth. Suddenly they think you're calculating, observing, planning 5 steps ahead. They believe you see things they don't. They believe you're making moves they can't track. Whether you are or aren't doesn't even matter. They believe it because success made your silence louder than any words could be. And what's interesting is you start to enjoy the silence more too. Not because it hides you, but because it frees you. When you were quiet before, you felt ignored. But now your quiet becomes a choice, a luxury, a strategy. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to justify. You don't need to announce every step or convince anyone of your worth. Success gave you the space to let silence speak for you, and silence speaks with a confidence you never had the chance to use before. People hear your silence differently once you rise, because it stops sounding like defeat and starts sounding like control. It stops looking like insecurity and starts looking like intention. It stops being emptiness and starts being presence. The same quiet that once made them overlook you now forces them to look closer, forces them to wonder what they missed, forces them to realize you were never empty. You were preparing. Distance reveals intentions more loudly than words. People love to talk, don't they? They'll swear loyalty, promise support, act like they're tied to your story with ropes that can't be cut. But watch what happens when you step back just a little. Watch how the room changes when you stop reaching out first, when you stop checking in, when you stop feeding their ego, their comfort, their sense of control. Suddenly the ones who claimed they'd always be there become strangely quiet. Suddenly their schedules grow full, their responses dry up, their interest evaporates like it was never real. Funny how a few steps back can expose years of pretending. Words tell you who people want to be. Distance tells you who they are. Anyone can act close when you're convenient. Anyone can show affection when they need something from you. Anyone can perform loyalty when it makes them look good. But when you create space, when you remove the benefits, the attention, the energy you used to give them, the truth shows up. The people who were only there for what you provided drift away like smoke. The ones who cared only when it was easy suddenly find it too hard to reach across the same distance they once demanded you cross for them. Distance is the great unmasker. It doesn't demand explanation. It doesn't negotiate. It simply reveals. When you step back, you see who follows. When you go quiet, you see who notices. When you stop giving, you see who still offers something without being asked. And most of the time, the silence screams louder than any confession ever could. People who were so loud in your life suddenly fall mute. People who'd swear they'd never leave vanish without a fight. People you trusted show you how temporary their loyalty really was. It's fascinating how distance triggers reactions that talking never could. Some people panic when you pull away, not because they miss you, but because they're losing access to your energy. They're losing the version of you that made them feel important, needed, powerful. They scramble to pull you back, not out of care, but out of habit. Others don't react at all because you were never a priority to begin with. They were comfortable letting you carry the connection. When you stopped, the whole thing collapsed instantly, revealing how one-sided it always was. And then there are the rare few who step forward when you create space, the ones who notice your absence, not because it inconveniences them, but because they genuinely feel the gap. They come closer without being invited. They check in without being reminded. They give without keeping score. Distance doesn't scare them, it clarifies them. Those are the ones worth keeping. Those are the ones who show up without needing a spotlight, but you learn that only by stepping back, by removing yourself from the noise, by refusing to keep putting effort into connections held together by your effort alone. You start seeing patterns you once excused. You see who was using you as a distraction, who was using you as a ladder, who was using you as a crutch. Distance is a magnifying glass for motives people hide beneath smiles. They can fake closeness up close, but they can't fake consistency when you're not standing. Right there, people hate distance because it exposes how little they actually contribute. They hate it because it removes their excuses up close. They can blame busyness, blame misunderstandings, blame timing. But distance doesn't offer them a script. Distance only shows whether they move closer or drift further. And the drift is never accidental. People move exactly where their priorities pull them. If you mean something to them, they'll close the gap. If you don't, they'll let the space swallow the connection whole. What makes distance powerful is that it reveals what words try so desperately to cover. Someone can swear they care, but if they disappear the moment you stop putting in the effort, you have your answer. Someone can promise they'll stay, but if they only show up when life is easy, you have your answer. Someone can tell you you're important, But if they treat your space like an exit sign, you have your answer. Distance brings truth without asking permission, and the truth is never polite. It's blunt. It's cold. It's honest. It shows you who's genuine, who's opportunistic, who's temporary. It shows you who values you and who valued the version of you that served them. It shows you whose affection was real and whose affection was performance. Distance doesn't break relationships, it reveals whether there was one in the first place. You start realizing how many connections survived only because you kept them alive. How many conversations happened only because you initiated them. How many bonds looked strong only because you were the glue. And once you pull that glue away, the pieces fall exactly where they always belonged. The same people who doubted you will rehearse new versions of the past. They'll rewrite it, twist it, polish it, repaint it, anything to make themselves look a little smarter, a little kinder, a little less wrong about you. People hate being wrong, especially about someone they thought they could easily dismiss. They hate the idea that they underestimated you. It bruises their ego, scratches their pride. So when you rise, when you grow, when you become the version of yourself they never believed existed, they don't celebrate you. No, they adjust the story. They start acting like they saw it all along. It's amusing, really, watching them scramble to revise their memories. They'll say they always knew you had potential, even though they laughed behind your back. They'll claim they saw something in you, even though they never supported you. They'll insist they were rooting for you, even though the only thing they rooted for was your failure to prove their predictions right. But now that you've shattered those predictions, now that your success forces them into an uncomfortable corner, they reach for the easiest escape. Rewriting history, people don't mind lying to you. What truly fascinates me is how often they lie to themselves. They convince themselves they were supportive, encouraging, insightful. It's not even about fooling you. Half of them are trying desperately to repair the story inside their own heads. Because admitting they doubted you means admitting they lack vision. Admitting they underestimated you means admitting their judgment is weak. And nothing terrifies them more than seeing themselves as the villain in someone else's success story, so they adjust. They add little edits, little scenes that never happen. They soften the impact of their skepticism. They pretend their silence was respect, their absence was space, their criticism was guidance. They rehearse these new versions of the past like actors practicing lines before a show. They want to deliver their rewritten script flawlessly so you don't catch the cracks. In their performance, watch how their tone changes when you walk into a room. Suddenly they speak as if they were there during your struggle. They talk like witnesses, not bystanders, like supporters, not skeptics. They try to place themselves into chapters they never touched. They want credit without contribution, presence without participation. They want to be associated with your success after spending years detached from your effort. But you remember, that's the beautiful part. You remember the doubt in their eyes, the dismissal in their voice, the impatience in their tone. You remember how they looked at you like you were foolish for dreaming. You remember how they distanced themselves from you when you needed support the most. You remember how they watched you fail and didn't offer a hand. Funny how memory works, it stays sharp for the things they hope you forget. And when you don't forget, when you stand there fully aware of the truth, their new stories become even more ridiculous. They rely on your silence to validate their revision. But silence isn't agreement. Silence is observation. Silence is letting them talk long enough to expose themselves. They keep rewriting, rehearsing, performing, thinking you'll eventually believe their new version of events. But the more they try to reshape the past, the more obvious it becomes that they're running from the truth. People will always try to distance themselves from their own failures, even when those failures are simply misjudgments about you. They'll hide behind excuses. I didn't want to distract you. I was giving you space. I was just being realistic. But realism becomes cowardice when it underestimates the wrong person. And now that your success makes their doubt look small, they scramble to appear wiser than they were. Some will even become bold enough to take partial credit. They'll tell others they gave you advice, pushed you, inspired you. They'll turn moments of discouragement into fabricated encouragement. They'll paint themselves as mentors, guides, supporters, not because they helped you, but because your rise exposes the truth about who they are. weren't, and the truth is, people treat stories the same way they treat mirrors. They adjust them until the reflection is flattering. Your growth doesn't just reveal who you are, it reveals who they were pretending to be. It forces them to confront the version of themselves they'd rather ignore. So they rewrite. They rehearse. They patch their memories with lies until they feel safe again, but the past doesn't change because they retell it. It changes only in their minds. And you stand there, watching them perform these edited versions of history, knowing full well that the only reason they rewrite the story is because the original one makes them uncomfortable. They doubted you, then you rose, and now they're rewriting the script so they don't look like the one who missed the whole plot. Attention follows power, not loyalty. People like to pretend otherwise, like they're drawn to kindness, connection, shared memories. They like to imagine they value loyalty, that they stay because of love, friendship, principles. But watch them closely, really watch. Their actions betray their words every single time. They don't move toward what's loyal, they move toward what's rising, what's shining, what's winning. Power pulls people the way gravity pulls everything else, and the second you start climbing, you'll notice all sorts of faces suddenly, turning your direction when you had nothing. You could count the number of people who cared on one hand, sometimes on one finger. They weren't blinded by loyalty. They were blinded by your lack of power. No spotlight, no attention, no influence, nothing to gain. People don't gather around emptiness. They gather around opportunity. And when you finally start to rise, you realize something sickeningly honest. Loyalty isn't what attracts them, momentum is. Not you, but what being near you might offer the moment you start holding power, even a little. The air around you changes. Suddenly people lean closer. Suddenly they listen more carefully. Suddenly your words sound wiser. Your presence feels heavier. Your silence feels meaningful. They treat you as if you've transformed overnight, but you know better. You didn't change your value, and their eyes did. That's the trick. People see you through the lens of what they think you can do for them. When that lens shifts, their behavior shifts with it, and the ones who once ignored you, oh, they're the most entertaining. They come creeping back with smiles too wide and compliments too practiced. They talk as if they always believed in you, as if they knew you'd make it. But you remember their silence. You remember their distance. You remember the doubt dripping off their every word when you were building alone. Now that you've gained a little power, suddenly they remember your name. Suddenly they're fascinated by your journey. Suddenly you're worth checking in on. It's predictable, almost boring, how quickly loyalty evaporates when power isn't present. People are magnets for advantage. They orbit those who glow, who are rising, who hold something they want: status, influence, connections, validation. They follow power the way moths follow a flame. Not because they love the flame, but because they're drawn to the brightness. If that flame moves, they move. If that flame dims, they drift. Loyalty doesn't tether them. Interest does, and interest is as temporary as smoke. Look at how they treat someone falling versus someone rising. The one who falls gets silence, excuses, distance. The one who rises gets applause, attention, sudden affection. Same person, different level of power. That's what exposes the truth. People respond to your position, not your character. They don't adjust based on who you are, they adjust based on where you stand. And the higher you stand, the louder their attention grows. Some people will swear they're loyal until you lose something, until you have a setback, until life strips you of the shine they were attracted to. Then you'll see how fragile their loyalty really is. It's easy to stay when there's something to gain, harder when all that's left is you. Loyalty without benefit is rare, and most people don't possess it. They love the version of you that benefits them, not the version of you that struggles. They don't follow you. They follow the current of your success, but what they don't realize is that their shifting attention teaches you something valuable. It reveals who was genuine and who was opportunistic. It shows you who came for you and who came for what you could offer. It draws a line between allies and audience members. And once you see that line, you can never unsee it. The funny part is that the moment you stop needing their attention is the moment they want it most. Power doesn't just attract, it intimidates. When you no longer chase their approval, they start chasing yours, not out of loyalty, but out of fear of being left behind. They sense your independence. They sense you're no longer controlled by their validation. And that makes you dangerous to them. Someone who doesn't need attention is someone they now want attention from, so they cling. They hover. They try to stay close, not because they value you, but because losing access to you would mean losing access to what your power could do for them. They attach themselves like shadows, hoping proximity will translate to benefit. They follow the glow, pretending it's loyalty, when really it's hunger. People don't flock to loyalty. They flock to power. And power, once tasted, shows you exactly who everyone truly is. You know, it's funny how people pretend they don't see you until they suddenly need something you carry. Not money, not status, something rarer, something they can't manufacture in their little workshops of excuses. They start watching you the moment you stop begging for their attention. They peek through the cracks, wondering how you survived the storms they swore would drown you. They observe the way you walk now, a little slower, a little wiser, like someone who has seen the inside of the fire and came out carrying the flames in his pockets. They don't ask how you did it. They don't want the story. They want the benefit. They always want the benefit. And now that you're not waving your arms and shouting for help, now that you aren't crawling around asking for their validation, they start whispering about you like you're some kind of rare creature. They didn't expect you to rise. They didn't expect you to grow teeth. They didn't expect you to learn the art of silence, because silence is dangerous. Silence makes people nervous. Silence means you learn to live without them. There comes a moment when you stop being the one reaching out, not because of pride, not because of arrogance, but because you finally realized something they never taught you. The more you chase, the faster they run. The more you give, the less they value it. The more you speak, the less they listen. But when you stop, when you stand still, when you start feeding your energy into your own wound, instead of their egos, that's when they feel the empty space where your attention used to be. They feel the quiet, and the quiet is haunting. It makes them wonder what you've learned, who you've become, what you discovered that no longer requires their approval. They start replaying the moments they ignored you, the messages they never answered, the opportunities they never offered. Suddenly, those small acts don't feel so small anymore. They feel like mistakes, big ones, and mistakes have a way of demanding correction. It's amazing how quickly people shift when they think you're no longer under their thumb. They start to panic without showing it. They test little openings in conversation, like tapping on a locked door just to see if you'll open it again. They ask, "How have you been?" with this trembling curiosity, hoping you'll say you've been miserable without them. But you say nothing. You smile. You let them wonder. You let their minds fill in the blanks. People fear the unknown more than anything, and now you have become the unknown. Your silence becomes a mirror, forcing them to look at what they did or didn't do, and they don't like what they see. They never do. But guilt has a remarkable way of turning even the coldest hearts into eager hands, hands that suddenly reach for you. You see, the moment you stop asking for space in their world is the exact moment they start wanting space in yours. The moment you stop craving their approval is the moment they start craving your presence. Humans are funny creatures. They worship what moves without them. They chase what walks away. They want what they once ignored, simply because they're terrified someone else will notice it first. And now they see the glow around you, this strange, unsettling glow of someone who rebuilt himself without witnesses. They want to get close enough to understand it, to touch it, maybe even to claim it. But they forgot something important. What's rebuilt without them doesn't need them. So now they reach. They reach because your absence spoke louder than your words ever could. They reach because they want access to the version of you born in solitude. They reach because they think maybe, just maybe, you'll let them back in. But the truth is, they're not reaching for you. They're reaching for the comfort of knowing you still revolve around their gravity, and you don't anymore. That's what scares them. That's what draws them in. That's what makes them realize they underestimated the power of being forgotten by the very person they once overlooked. People think silence means you've stopped caring, but it really means you've stopped wasting your breath. They start to notice it when the echoes of your old self vanish. No more reaching out. No more updates. No more explaining yourself to people who treated your truth like background noise. And then something strange happens. They begin to feel the absence of your voice more than they ever felt the presence of it. They start checking their phones, scrolling through old conversations, pretend they're looking for something else, but no, they're looking for you. They want to see if you slipped an apology into the cracks somewhere, or left a hint that you still revolve around their opinions. They want reassurance, but they won't say it out loud, because that would mean admitting they misread you. They underestimated you. They didn't think you had the strength to walk away from their games. They didn't imagine you could grow comfortable in your own company. No one expects you to break the pattern until you do. Quiet version of you unsettles them. You used to explain yourself, defend yourself, justify yourself, bend yourself. But now you don't give them anything. No reactions, no explanations, no invitations. Just that stillness, that unsettling, unpredictable stillness. And it forces them to reflect on the part they played in pushing you into solitude. They replay conversations, searching for the moment they crossed a line they didn't even see. They try to remember the last time you seemed excited to talk to them, the last time you trusted them with your thoughts. Memory becomes their punishment. They start feeling guilty for things they brushed off before, wondering if they should have listened closer, cared more, acted sooner. And guilt has a way of dragging people back to the very doors they once slammed shut. There comes a point when they realize the silence isn't an invitation to chase you or question you, it's a verdict, a quiet verdict. You grew tired of teaching people how to treat you. You grew tired of rehearsing your worth for an audience that preferred the sound of their own applause. So you gave them the one thing they never expected, distance. And distance reveals more truth than words ever could. It shows who comes closer, who runs away, and who never cared enough to notice the difference. People will move mountains for the attention they think they deserve, but they crumble when confronted with the attention they've lost. That's when the panic sets in. The little cracks in their confidence begin to show. They start behaving differently, softer, almost polite, because they want something from you that they never valued when it was freely given. They want access. They want the old version of you, but that version doesn't live here anymore. Your silence starts twisting inside their minds like a riddle they cannot solve. Did I push them too far? Are they angry? Do they hate me? Did they replace me? The questions multiply because they don't have answers. And humans crave answers more than truth. They want certainty, control, predictability. But you stripped all of that away the moment you stopped explaining yourself. Suddenly you become a mystery, and mystery draws attention. Mystery draws curiosity. Mystery draws out confessions from people who never believed they owed you one. They start telling you things you never asked for. They start offering effort they never used to. They want to anchor themselves back into your life before you drift completely out of their reach. And the fear of losing you makes them reach in ways they never did when they assumed you'd always be there. What they don't understand is that silence didn't make you colder. It made you clearer. It taught you who values your presence and who only valued your availability. It taught you who listened and who merely waited to speak. It taught you that some people don't realize what they had until the spotlight swings away from them and onto the one they took for granted. That's why they're returning now, reaching with careful hands, choosing their words like they're diffusing a bomb. They know they can't demand anything from you anymore. They can't guilt you, manipulate you, or sweet talk you back into shrinking for their comfort. You've become someone they can't predict, and nothing frightens people more than losing their grip on someone they once controlled. Now they reach because the silence taught them a truth they never wanted to face. You were never the one who needed them. They needed you. And now they're hoping, waiting, praying that maybe they haven't lost you for good.